You never forget the day someone tries to steal your land with a smile. It was a warm Tuesday morning in late spring. The sun was just climbing over the treetops. The lake shimmered like glass, and my coffee hadn't even gone cold yet when I heard the unmistakable crunch of designer heels on gravel. I looked up from my porch to see Karen Blake, president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA, strutting down my private dock with two of her loyal board members in tow. Clipboard in one hand, iced latte in the other, she wore a wide-brimmed sun hat and an expression that said, "I own everything I see." Without even a good morning, she stopped halfway down my dock, turned on her heel and said, "Mr. Whitaker, the HOA has voted to declare this lake community property." I nearly dropped my mug. "This lake's been in my family since 1947, I said. "It's private property, always has been." Karen tilted her head like she was speaking to a child. "Well, it's accessible to the entire neighborhood, and since it enhances the communal aesthetic, the board has determined that it qualifies as a shared natural feature." I was speechless. She went on, "Starting next week, we'll be adding a shared use dock, a paddle boat rental kiosk, and picnic areas along the east bank. We also voted to remove any fencing or no trespassing signs obstructing the lake view." "You can't do that," I said. "You're trespassing right now." She smiled, that slow, smug Karen smile. "We're doing this for the good of the community. You'll still be allowed to enjoy the lake, of course, but so will everyone else." I watched her walk off my dock like she'd just declared victory in some HOA war. I didn't follow. I didn't argue. I just stood there, heart pounding in my chest. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. That came later when they delivered the lumber. 2 days later, a contractor dropped off boards, posts, and hardware labeled Community Dock Phase 1. They even posted a temporary construction permit, approved by the HOA Architectural Committee, right at the foot of my boat ramp. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the floor of my old lodge, built by my grandfather's hands, walls lined with photos of hunting trips, family fish fries, and generations of Whitakers pulling catfish from the same dock Karen just claimed as hers. That's when I remembered Clay. Clay Harrison, an old buddy from my wildlife officer days down in Florida. We'd worked together on gator relocations back in the 90s. He owed me a favor, and I never cashed it in. Until now. I called him the next morning. "You still run that private transport operation?" I asked. There was a pause. "What are you up to, Hank?" "Just need a few of your scaly friends to help remind some folks that lakes aren't meant to be shared without permission." Clay laughed for a solid 10 seconds. Then he said, "I'll see you Friday." On Saturday night, just after sunset, Clay's truck backed up to my launch ramp. 3 adult American alligators, Big Macs, Darla, and Two Tooth, slid silently into the water and vanished beneath the surface. Sunday came. So did the HOA. They held a community lake kickoff BBQ. Balloons, lawn chairs, kids running around in swimsuits. Karen wore a sundress and stood at the microphone giving a speech about neighborhood unity through nature. Then she said the words I'd been waiting for. "Everyone, don't be shy. Go ahead and jump in." I leaned back in my rocking chair and sipped my sweet tea. About 10 minutes later, the first scream tore across the cove. A teenager spotted Darla's head poking just above the surface. Panic, chaos, shouting. Karen yelling, "Stay calm," as parents grabbed their kids and ran for the parking lot. I didn't say a word, didn't even smile, because I gave them exactly what they asked for. They wanted access to the lake. I just forgot to mention who else lived there now. The lake wasn't just water to me, it was my history, my peace, my bloodline. My grandfather, Carl Whitaker, bought this land after returning from World War II. Back when this entire area was nothing but pine groves and muddy trails, he spent 3 years damming the lower creek with hand tools, a mule, and the stubbornness only a Whitaker could carry. That dam formed the lake we have today, a 12-acre crescent nestled between low hills, fed by 2 natural springs and rain runoff. He raised a family here, built the main lodge from cedar logs, and taught my father to fish, hunt, and respect the land. Every 4th of July, the whole family would gather by the lake for catfish fries, fireworks, and stories around the bonfire. I caught my first base off the South Dock. My wife and I got married under the willow tree by the West Bank. My kids learned to swim in that water, and my grandkids still come visit every summer. So when Karen Blake stood on that same dock and told me it wasn't mine anymore, it wasn't just insulting, it was a declaration of war. Willow Creek Estates wasn't always a homeowners association. For the longest time, it was just Whitaker land and a few scattered homesteads. But like everything else in this country, developers saw opportunity. In 2008, a firm from Atlanta offered my father, then sick and tired of property taxes and upkeep, a deal to carve out lots around the lake. I was living in Pensacola back then, working wildlife enforcement. I wasn't happy, but he sold off the outer parcels and kept the core 25 acres for our family. The subdivision that popped up was marketed as rustic lakeside living with modern comfort. At first, it wasn't so bad. The early residents were kind folks, retirees, quiet families, fishermen. We shared the road. They respected the lake. No drama. But in 2010, everything changed. Karen Blake moved in. She was a widow from Scottsdale, Arizona. Bought one of the biggest homes on the ridge with her late husband's insurance money, or so I was told. Wore expensive sunglasses, drove a Tesla, and always acted like the rest of us were still living in the Stone Age. Within 6 months, she ran for HOA president, unopposed, because no one else cared. That's when the rules started changing. The first change was subtle. No trash cans visible from the street. Okay, that made sense. Then came restrictions on mailbox colors. They had to be HOA-approved eggshell white. I got fined because mine was too cream. Next came the lawn integrity standards. I was cited for uneven hedges and a bird feeder too close to the road. I kept quiet. I've never been one to make noise unless absolutely necessary. But then she banned fishing on unauthorized parts of the lake. She meant my shoreline. She built a new HOA dock, bright blue plastic, eyesore as all get out, on the east end, then claimed that as the only legal spot for fishing or launching kayaks. She even threatened to fine my grandkids when they tried to swim off our own dock. It was maddening, and worse, people started going along with it. You see, most of the neighbors weren't bad folks, just tired, retired, and didn't want trouble. Karen used that. She spun everything like she was protecting property values and maintaining neighborhood standards. She weaponized paperwork. Then she found a clause buried deep in the HOA charter, one that allowed the board to claim access rights to any unobstructed natural feature adjacent to community property. That's how she made her move on the lake. I found out through a notice stapled to a wooden post at the base of my boat ramp. Effective May 10th, Willow Creek Lake shall be designated as shared community property for all HOA members in good standing. Any fencing, signage, or barriers limiting access must be removed by May 12th. My name wasn't on the letter. My signature wasn't on the vote. I stormed into the next HOA meeting, held in the community clubhouse, where Karen sat like a queen behind a folding table, sipping cucumber water. "Who gave you the right?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "The board passed the measure unanimously." "But it's my land. You can't vote away my deed." She smiled sweetly. "You're welcome to dispute it legally, of course, but I'd advise against it. The board has funds allocated for legal defense, and we're very confident in our interpretation." I realized then, this wasn't ignorance. This was calculated. They thought I was too old, too alone, too tired to fight. They didn't know I had friends. I called Clay Harrison the next day. We hadn't spoken in years, but the bond forged between two Florida wildlife officers facing hurricanes, poachers, and gator nests doesn't break. He still ran a licensed wildlife transport business, mainly moving nuisance gators out of residential ponds. But he also housed a few permanent residents, older gators that couldn't go back to the wild. They're like grumpy retirees, Clay joked. Big, slow, loud snappers. But they sure make folks think twice about cannonballing. Perfect. He agreed to bring me 3 of them, all registered, tagged, and covered under Florida wildlife transport agreements extended to private land with environmental purposes, like mosquito control or invasive species mitigation. Technically, I had paperwork, but practically, I had muscle. Real prehistoric muscle. 2 days before the barbecue incident, a construction crew showed up, sent by the HOA. They started marking off trees, measuring shoreline, and unloading lumber for the new community deck. I told them to stop, showed them the boundary stakes, my boundary stakes, buried deep and marked with official county GPS coordinates. They shrugged. Just doing what the board told us, sir. That night I didn't sleep. Again. I looked through my granddad's old journals. He'd written about this lake like it was sacred. Every fish caught, every storm survived, every inch of shoreline cleared by hand. I ran my hand along the old cedar post where we carved our family initials each summer. Then I looked across the water, smiled, and whispered, "Time for some new residents." You ever watch a house of cards fall in slow motion? That was what Sunday felt like. The air was sticky with humidity, and you could hear kids' laughter bouncing off the lake before the HOA barbecue even started. Karen had gone all out. Folding chairs lined the shoreline, 2 pop-up tents with Willow Creek HOA banners flapped in the breeze, and the smell of grilled hot dogs and baked beans wafted through the pines. I stayed on my porch, of course, in my rocking chair under the shade, sweet tea in hand. From where I sat, I could see everything. Karen was glowing, not just from the heat, but from pride. She wore a bright blue sundress with her HOA president lanyard like it was a royal medallion. Her little white poodles yapped at everyone who passed. She held a microphone and gave a speech about bringing the community together and reclaiming shared natural resources for neighborhood unity. You'd think she personally discovered the lake. Then came her fatal mistake. With a wide smile, she raised her voice. "Everyone, don't be shy. Go ahead and jump in. That lake is ours now." I leaned forward. Across the cove, 3 teenage boys ran and belly-flopped straight into the water, cheering. That was about the time Big Max made his entrance. Big Max was 11 feet long, about 520 pounds, and carried himself like a prehistoric emperor. He rose slow from the water, just his snout and eyes breaking the surface, drifting silently like a dark log in the current. One of the boys spotted him first. He froze mid-swim, eyes wide. Then he screamed, "Gator! Gator!" People turned. A few laughed nervously until Darla surfaced near the kayak rack. That's when the panic really began. Chairs tipped over. A woman dropped a full tray of potato salad. One guy tripped and hit the grill, knocking it sideways. Kids cried, dogs barked. Karen's poodles slipped their leashes and bolted toward the woods. Karen stood frozen, mouth open, microphone still in hand. Then someone yelled, "Call 911!" I kept rocking in my chair, calm as a preacher at sunrise. They got lucky. Big Max just drifted past, unbothered by the commotion. He disappeared under the dock like a submarine returning to base. Darla did the same, slow and steady. No one got hurt, but nobody dared swim again. By evening, HOA members gathered at Karen's house like a funeral was happening. I imagine they were trying to figure out how to spin this disaster. That night, I got an email from the HOA board. "You have endangered the community by introducing dangerous wildlife into a shared resource. Legal action may be pursued if the situation is not remedied immediately." I almost laughed. Instead, I replied with one sentence. "You'll want to double-check your property maps." Then I attached the full county deed, survey boundaries, and the license relocation permit for the Alligators. The next morning, I dropped printed copies into every mailbox on my road. By noon, the neighborhood WhatsApp thread was on fire. "Wait, the lake's not public? He has permits?" Karen said the board had the right. If the Gators are legal, then what the hell did we vote for? That evening, 2 families knocked on my door, not to complain, but to apologize. "We didn't know," said Mr. Carter, a retired Air Force pilot. "Karen told us the lake was technically part of the HOA Greenbelt. We wouldn't have supported this if we knew it was your family's land. Your granddad gave swimming lessons to my sister in the 60s, said Miss Paula, wiping a tear. "She was so proud of that memory. I'm sorry we'd let it go this far." Others kept their distance, but I noticed a shift. People weren't smiling at Karen anymore. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Rumors swirled that half the board was ready to resign, and a few members were asking for a full legal review of every HOA vote made under Karen's leadership. Of course, she didn't go down without a fight. On Wednesday morning, I found a fresh notice taped to my mailbox. "Immediate cease and desist. Dangerous predators on premises." It was from Karen directly, threatening code violations, insurance policy reviews, and even animal control. I chuckled. She was getting desperate. That afternoon, I drove into town and met with a lawyer, Jesse Barnes, an old friend of my daughter's, who loved nothing more than chewing apart bad faith legal threats. He took one look at the HOA charter and whistled. She's standing on sand here, Hank. You've got the deed, the state permits, and the zoning codes to back it up. She's got a stapler and wishful thinking. I nodded. Think it's time we had a little community gathering. Thursday rolled around. Karen tried to cancel the HOA meeting due to safety concerns, but too many residents had questions to ignore. We met in the church basement down by Miller's Hill. Over 40 people showed up, more than I'd ever seen at an HOA meeting. Some even brought popcorn. Karen looked haggard. Her hair was pulled back tight, her makeup rushed, her voice wobbly as she opened with a statement about recent dangerous behavior by one resident. But I stood up, held up the microphone, and simply said, "Let me tell you the truth about this lake." And that's exactly what I did. I showed them my granddad's original map, the survey markers, the deed, the county water access classification, the wildlife relocation permits. I even brought Clay in on a video call. He gave a short but sharp explanation of how the gators were legal and essential for balancing invasive fish species. Then I dropped the final bomb. The HOA has no legal claim to this lake. Never did. Every vote taken to seize it was based on false interpretation and overreach. Karen lied to you. The room went silent. Then, applause. Not thunderous, but enough. There's something sacred about a town hall meeting when it turns quiet. Not the kind of silence you get in church, reverent and still, but the kind where you can feel the tension humming in the air. The kind where people are ready to see the truth laid bare, no matter how ugly it is. That's exactly the silence we sat in after I finished my presentation in the church basement that Thursday evening. I just spent the past 30 minutes showing every map, permit, and legal document tied to my lake. From my grandfather's original deed in 1947 to the Florida wildlife permits I held in my hand. I hadn't raised my voice once. I didn't need to. The facts did all the shouting for me. Karen Blake sat across the room, arms folded tightly, her jaw clenched so hard you could see the muscle twitch in her cheek. Her two biggest supporters on the HOA board, Todd Jenkins and Beverly Holcomb, avoided her gaze like school kids caught cheating on a test. Then someone finally spoke. It was Mary Collins, our neighborhood's elder, a retired county judge and someone everyone respected. She stood slowly and cleared her throat. "Mr. Whitaker, may I ask something?" "Of course, Mary." She turned to face the room. "Does anyone here doubt the evidence Mr. Whitaker just presented?" Not a single hand rose. Mary nodded. "Then I move we open the floor for discussion on a motion to censure the HOA president for overreach and misuse of authority." It was the verbal equivalent of a thunderclap. Karen shot up like she'd been jolted by lightning. "This is ridiculous," she barked, her voice sharp. "He's manipulating you all with emotional blackmail. That lake was never fully fenced. There's no gate. The charter clearly states—" Mary raised a calm hand. "The charter does not override a registered land deed filed with the county and recognized by the state of Georgia. But the vote, Mary cut her off, was illegitimate because it was based on a false interpretation of access rights." That shut Karen up, but only for a moment. Karen's face turned redder than a cherry tomato on a July day. Her voice cracked as she snapped, "I built this community. Before I got here, this place was a mess. Overgrown lawns, cluttered driveways, people storing canoes like hillbillies." A loud murmur rippled through the room. She pointed at me. "And he thinks he's above the rules just because his granddaddy caught fish here in the 50s. You're all being sentimental and blind. The HOA has legal standing." "No, Karen," said Todd Jenkins quietly. "We don't." She turned, stunned. "What did you say?" "I said we don't have legal standing. You told us the lake was unclaimed, but it's not. It never was. You lied to us. You were part of that vote, Todd." "I regret it," he said, standing up, "and I won't defend it anymore." That's when the room began to shift. More voices piped up. "He fined my son for playing music after 8 p.m. She told me my backyard wind chimes were a security risk. She made me repaint my mailbox 4 times. It was like a dam had broken. Every grudge, every frustration, every time Karen had overstepped her authority, poured out into the open. Her power didn't just collapse, it evaporated. Mary Collins stepped forward again, calm and poised. I propose a formal vote of no confidence in Karen Blake's leadership. If passed, this body will remove her as HOA president, effective immediately. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Those in favor? Mary asked. One by one, hands rose. It wasn't even close. Out of 43 attendees, 38 voted to remove her. The room was quiet again, but now it was a calm, cleansing kind of quiet. The kind that follows a thunderstorm. Karen sat back down slowly as if gravity itself had grown stronger. She didn't speak again that night. Bill Carter, our quiet, level-headed veteran neighbor, was nominated as interim president. Nobody objected. He stood, cleared his throat, and said, "We're going to do things different from now on. Fairer, respectful. We're not here to control each other. We're here to live in peace." The room applauded. After the meeting, folks came up to me one by one. They shook my hand. Some offered apologies. Others brought up memories of my grandfather teaching them to fish or helping fix a roof after a storm. For the first time in years, I felt like part of a community again. Not just a guy defending his land, but a neighbor. As for Karen, the next morning a for sale sign went up in her yard. Rumor had it she'd already contacted a realtor in Savannah. She didn't show her face at the mailboxes again. Her poodles barked from behind a curtain, but Karen stayed invisible, and I was just fine with that. Nobody touched my lake again. The HOA dock? Removed. The trampoline platform Karen ordered? Canceled. Instead, the community asked me, to help organize nature walks for the kids and teach them about the gators. From a safe distance, of course. Big Max, Darla, and Two Tooth earned local legend status. We even put up a sign by the shoreline. Private property. Resident gators. Swim at your own risk. A few weeks later, I was back in my rocker. Same porch, same sweet tea. The lake was quiet, as it should be. A great blue heron landed near the cove. The trees swayed softly in the breeze. Bill Carter walked up my drive with his grandson. "Mind if the boy takes a look from the dock?" he asked. "Long as he stays on it," I chuckled. "Big Macs don't like surprise visitors." We laughed, and as the boy stood watching the water, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Relief. Not just because the HOA backed down, but because justice had come from the people, not just the papers. 2 weeks after the HOA meeting, Karen Blake was gone. Her Tesla disappeared from the driveway one morning, and by afternoon the moving truck had pulled up. No farewell parties, no goodbyes, just cardboard boxes and silence. The for sale sign out front didn't last long. Word had spread through town about her antics, and it took a while before anyone even bothered to inquire. But for the rest of us, life moved forward, and for the first time in years, it felt like Willow Creek Estates could breathe again. Under Bill Carter's leadership, the HOA was reshaped from the ground up. The board added new bylaws requiring community-wide approval for major decisions. No more backdoor votes, no more surprise notices in the mailbox. Fines for petty offenses were suspended, and neighbors were encouraged to talk things out before running to the board. A new committee was formed, one focused on preserving the local environment and respecting property rights. They even invited me to join. I politely declined, but I appreciated the gesture. Sometimes the best way to serve your community is to step back and let them grow from the lesson. The lake, my family's lake, was left alone. No docks, no trampolines, no community use signs, just water, trees, and the occasional ripple from Big Macs patrolling the shoreline like the old soldier he was. Every so often, kids would gather near the boathouse with binoculars, hoping to catch a glimpse of the gators. I gave a few talks about wildlife safety and how gators aren't villains. They just demand respect. Much like land ownership. And I'll tell you something. I've never seen this community more united than the day we planted a cedar tree in honor of my grandfather right by the West Bank. A symbol, folks said, of the real roots of this place. Now I spend my days where I belong, on that old porch, watching the sunrise over the water, listening to the wind move through the pines. The gators keep to themselves. The neighbors wave when they pass. The mailbox is finally empty of threats. Justice didn't come with sirens or lawsuits. It came with truth, with community, and with the quiet courage to stand up when something you love is threatened. And as I lean back in my chair, sweet tea in hand, I smile. Because the lake is still here. Because the legacy still lives. Because sometimes the alligators aren't the ones you have to fear. There's a line between structure and control. HOAs were created to bring people together, to protect neighborhoods from neglect, to make sure one family's chaos didn't become another family's burden. But somewhere along the way, some HOAs forgot their purpose. They stopped being guardians of community and started acting like landlords in a town they didn't build. Karen Blake wasn't the first, and she won't be the last. She wrapped her ambition in rules. She used votes to cover for power grabs. She tried to rewrite decades of family history with a clipboard and a smile. But here's the truth. No piece of paper, no HOA charter, and no backyard vote gives you the right to erase someone's legacy. That lake wasn't just water, it was heritage. It was sweat, sacrifice, and memory. Karen didn't understand that. She thought she was running a neighborhood. Turns out she tried to conquer a community. And communities, well, they have a way of standing up, especially when the quiet ones finally speak. To those of you living under an HOA that respects boundaries, honors fairness, and actually serves the people, count your blessings. To those fighting against the Karens of the world, the ones who hide behind fine print and for your own good speeches, know this, you're not alone. Speak up, know your rights, learn your land. Because when you protect what's yours with grace and grit, you don't just win back your peace, you teach others how to keep theirs. Have you ever dealt with an HOA that overstepped its bounds? Do you think there should be stricter laws protecting home owners from abusive HOA leadership? Or maybe you have your own Karen story to share. Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. Your voice might help someone else stand up for their rights too. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true tales where justice bites back harder than any gator ever could. Because at the end of the day, it's not about rules, it's about respect. And respect starts at home.